Hello everyone and welcome. This is Christine with Powder Crafts, and today I'm here with a design team project for Scrapping for Less. I am making 4 more cards using collection 3 from the April 2020 Flavor of the Month card kit. The theme for the kit was City Streets and Country Roads. This particular collection is called Country Roads. So I have dug out the collection to see what I have left, and we're going to go ahead and start with card number 1. I am going to my little bin of some card bases that I want to use up so we can get those used. Trimmed down this piece of yellow paper to be the main panel on my card base, adding these little stripes of scrap paper. The bottom one wasn't quite long enough to go over the whole edge, so I just kind of trimmed it down, and it fits absolutely perfectly on the card base. So now I'm going to go ahead and use the stamp that came with this collection. This is called Country Roads. I'm going to go ahead and stamp that out on some pattern paper, and I'm going to do some ink blending on this as I case that from other design team members. I find coloring these kinds of images a little bit intimidating, which is kind of funny because at the end I thought Copics would be like my nemesis with this kind of stamp, but I do end up coloring one of these cards with the Copic markers, and actually it was really easy, and I'm really happy with how it came out. However, the vintage feel of adding some distress ink just to this entire little scene adds something special. So I went ahead and dug out my antique linen distress ink, grabbed my little ink blender, and we'll go ahead and just add a little bit of that antique linen right onto the card. And you're going to see me think a little bit in this one because I'm kind of like, all right, what else do I want to do with this? I'm going to bring in the twine on this card, and I do change my mind on how I want to use this more than once. I think I only show the one time there and then exactly how I use it. So moving on. So this, we're going to pop up on some foam tape. Also with this card, I do end up, after it sits on my desk for a little bit, I do end up putting some of those red enamel dots on it because I felt like it needed just something a little bit more on the other side where the twine isn't. So basically I just gathered this twine up and then tried to tie like a little knot very loosely in the middle. I just wanted it to be enough to kind of hold the twine together. And it was really just kind of a series of moving the twine in and out. I didn't really like tie a knot. And then I just used multi-matte medium to hold that down, and it's still holding strong. So moving on to card number 2, I want to use this floral piece, and I want it to be backed with this wood grain. It was not large enough to do that, so I just cut that wood grain piece in half, and then I'm just putting it on either side of my pattern, and no one will know any different, and it looks just as good. So I went ahead and stuck that down, and then I'm going to just put that on my paper trimmer and trim that little end off. Grabbing another card base, and now I'm going to also stamp out this image again. I'm basically doing the same thing I did on card number 1, which is bringing in my distress ink. I'm going to use the same circle die again. I know kind of card 1 and card 2 are really similar, but they're actually some of my favorite cards that I made from this collection. So we're going to go ahead and die cut that with a circle die, just like we did with card number 1, and I'm going to bring in the antique linen distress ink again and go ahead and add some of that. I don't go back into the ink pad though because I thought it was a little dark on the first one, and I didn't want it to be so dark on the second one, so I'm just using whatever ink was left over. So I added my panel to my card base, and I'm kind of deciding how else I want to do this. I feel like this little circle needs to sit on something. So I am going to go ahead and use this is a stitched sentiment fishtail die, sentiment die. I never remember the full name, which is so crazy because I use it all the time. But I didn't want to just have just a plain line. And I do end up bringing it a little over to the left and then cutting off the fishtail end on the other side. So it just has the one on the right. It doesn't necessarily, the circle piece doesn't necessarily sit on it, but I just thought it added a little something extra since that circle, it felt like it needed something a little extra. Adding 3 of the enamel dots found in this collection, and we are going to call that card done. So this card, I decide, you know, I don't want to do the distress ink again, and I'm still not convinced I want to color the image. So I decide that I'm going to just kind of play around with the pattern paper I have left first. And I end up switching gears more than once on this card. So first I think, okay, I'm going to use this. This is going to be my panel. What am I going to layer on this? I'm kind of playing with what I have left, which really isn't much. I have that 1 6x6 paper. So I decide, because I don't want to use the image again, I am going to use the flowery camera die that's found in the banana split section. So I'm running that through my Cuttlebug several times because my plates are really worn. So I ended up having to actually flip it upside down because my cutting plate actually doesn't really have any cuts in it. My B plates are totally worn. I don't even know how anything cuts out of it, but it somehow still works. So I'm going with it. But once I kind of flip that up towards the cutting plate where there weren't any, where it wasn't so beat up, it cut beautifully. So now I'm just taking out all of the tiny little bits. And I decide I'm going to put this on some of the yellow paper that is found in the kit. So I'm adding some liquid glue, and I do a terrible job putting it on this piece of paper. I've got it aside to dry, and now I'm kind of deciding, what am I doing with all this paper? So I am now trimming out my camera because I just wanted the yellow to be part of the background. And I'm just fussy cutting that out. And during this process, I'm like, man, there's a lot of glue dried all over. And I'm still pushing on through because I don't really have anything left for this kit if I abandon this card. So I am going to push through, and I'm thinking of a way, how can I cover that up? Is anyone really going to notice? Is this one of those things that I notice but other people won't? And really, at the end of the day, anyone would notice. It's pretty noticeable. There's dried glue all over that yellow paper. But at this point, I'm still in denial. So I'm putting some foam tape on my camera, and I do end up putting it on the red pattern paper here. And I decide I'm not using any other pattern paper on this. What I have left, it doesn't really go. It's not going to make a full panel, and so I'm going to leave this card like this. So then I start with a glitter brush, thinking I'm going to hide that glue. Then I'm like, you know what? I know how to hide this. I went ahead and grabbed my Nuvo glitter drops. Well, some of them are glitter drops. The green I don't have in glitter, so it'll be just regular. But I am using the Yellow Bird Nuvo glitter drops for anything in there that I want to be yellow, which is basically just the flower pieces. Then I grab the green that I have, and it's just regular Nuvo crystal drops, and that is in the woodland green color, and I'm doing that for like all the leafy parts. Sorry for my crazy hair in the picture. I basically had it standing straight up on top of my head. And for the camera part, I am just using the White Blizzard Nuvo glitter drops. And this is my absolute favorite glitter drop. So I fill in all the other space with this. And I apologize that this part took kind of a long time. I wanted to be really careful because if I'm going to put the Nuvo drops over this entire piece, I also didn't want it to be on the brown paper. I really wanted it to be in between the different pieces. So I'm trying to be super careful about how I put them on. And in the end, I don't love it, but I don't hate it. I feel like it's going to be one of those things that'll grow on me. I don't know. At the end, tell me what you think. I feel like in some ways I should have abandoned this and started over, and in other ways I am proud that I just persevered. So there really wasn't a quick shot there. I apologize, but you will see it at the end. So now we're moving on to our last card, and I am trying to figure out how best to lay all of these pattern papers. I know that I'm going to use the image again, and I know that this time I need to color it, which I'm glad I did because it really wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it would be. Sometimes with images like this, I am a little heavy-handed when I color, and so my colors tend to bleed, and I don't get as good of a result as I want. This, I kind of started out with the idea that I'm going to just kind of like, I guess, messy color it. Like I wasn't thinking too hard about it. I just did it and just tried to like lightly flick color on. And in the end, I'm actually really happy with how that came out. So I'm just stamping down with some Copic friendly ink on some scrap paper. Then I'm going to go ahead and pull out my square dies because this piece is going to be too big for that card front. So I'm going to just, trim down the most important areas of this image. So go ahead and just use the rectangle die, or not the rectangle, sorry, the square die. It's a square. And now I'm going to go ahead, stamp the sentiment. And this particular sentiment, I don't have the stamp set right here, so I'm not sure. I think it says, wherever you go, go with all your heart. Yeah, there we go. So I did zoom in so you could see the coloring. I do apologize because I do put part of the card together and I never zoomed out. It's not very long, so I just decided to leave it in instead of cut it out because you can kind of see what I'm doing. And sometimes I'm not perfect. I make mistakes when I card make. I make mistakes when I'm videoing. I definitely make mistakes during voiceover. I'm just doing the best I can to try to inspire others the way others have inspired me. I love this community. I love card making. And I love sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly with what I do. So I'm just using a variety of different greens. I'm just basically using draw the lines down with different colors for some sort of blending, and it really works with this card, I think. I just basically used two different browns. I just did a sloppy coloring of the lighter brown, and then I took a darker brown and just kind of traced some of those wood grain type pieces on those posts. So for the road, I decided it's going to be sort of a paved road. So I'm just using my cool gray markers. Here I thought, oh, I'm going to be so clever. And I'm just going to, go from darkest to lightest all the way down. The space was too big for that. It really wouldn't have looked paved. So I decided to take those same colors and just go from both sides. So use my darkest, my middle, and the light very in the middle. And I like the way that turned out. Grabbing this super light blue and just adding flicks of color into the upper portion for the sky. It did do some, like that sentiment bled a little when I did that, which I'm not sure why, because it's Copic friendly ink and it should have had plenty of time to dry, but sometimes ink does that. So this is where I'm still a little too close. I apologize, but what I am doing is taking two pieces of scrap paper that, because neither one is big enough to mat my image on. So what I did is I took two similar pieces that are similar size, put them together with like this little yellow strip of pattern paper in the middle, and used that entire piece to mat my image. And I really liked the result. So I'm just adding this last piece of scrap down on the bottom. I mean, it's not really the last, but it's a skinny little scrap. And also the wood grain right directly above it. I wanted them touching. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my sentiment to the middle. So it'll kind of sit on that wood grain piece a little bit. So I'm just adding some foam tape, and I think I just add the last two enamel dots to the bottom piece because that seemed to make the most sense since I only had two left. They seem to fit there just fine. And adding a little bit of sparkle with my Spectrum Noir glitter brush, and we are calling that done. So I have the stamp set left, and this is what I have for scraps for this collection. So thank you so very much for joining me today. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you would like to see more and you're not already, I would very much appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button. Tell me what you think about this card. Here's that close-up of that Nouveau card. That's what I'm calling it, the Nouveau card. Anyway, thank you so much. Have a great day or a great evening, whichever it is where you are at. Bye.